My name's Rachel McIntosh. I work in the Research and Evidence Division at the UK Government's Department for International Development. And I've been asked to speak about why research matters for development, and I'm going to give you a donor perspective on this issue. So we'll look at why DFID funds research and the difference research can make, and we'll then look at some of the challenges to getting research into use. And I'll talk a bit about the work that DFID is doing to address those challenges. Okay, so why DFID funds research? So DFID's Research and Evidence Division last financial year spent over £300 million on research, and that's across a variety of topics: agriculture, health, education, growth, infrastructure, governance, humanitarian issues, disasters. And research essentially can do three main things. It can develop new technologies and innovations. So, for example, maybe a new treatment for a health issue. It can tell us what works, what doesn't work, and also what brings value for money, which is really important, particularly important for donors or anyone funding work in international development. And it can also improve our understanding of issues, so how different issues interact, for example. So we're just going to spend a bit of time thinking about the impact of research on international development, because hopefully that will help to explain why DFID bothers to fund it. So what's it actually, how's it actually making a difference? So first of all, just to think about the evidence. So some of my colleagues recently carried out a peer-reviewed literature review on the impact of research on international development. And what they found is, on technologies and products, is that there's good evidence that research in those things is having an impact. And that is particularly in health and agriculture. It also found, sorry, just get a drink. It also found that research has informed decision-making by policymakers and also practitioners. And it did look a bit at economic rates of return from research. And it did find that there was a positive impact, but the studies are quite sensitive to a range of assumptions. So we have to treat those findings quite cautiously. So there is evidence that investment in research can have an impact on development, but it's not a guarantee, and we'll look at that in a few minutes. So just to give you a few examples of the impact of DFID-funded research. This is the Africa Community Access Programme, and this is working in 7 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and it aims to improve rural roads and transport. And it does this by developing, researching road design standards and maintenance as well, and it produces technical advice documents. And by 2020, AFCAP will have informed the design of 130,000 kilometres of road, which is about 30% of the entire road network in the countries that are participating. And in Kenya, the design approach to low-volume sealed roads may save up to £490 million. Okay, another example. So DFID funded a randomised controlled trial to find out whether giving vitamin A supplements to women of reproductive age in Ghana influenced the maternal mortality rate. And the results were really clear that it didn't make any difference. So as a result, the government of Ghana decided not to fund any further programmes, and it meant that then it could spend money on other pressing issues. And then the Young Lives programme. This is quite a unique international study, which is generating some really rich data. And it looks at poverty in some 12,000 children over a 15-year period. And this study is being carried out in Ethiopia, India, Peru and Vietnam. And this photo is of a school class in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, the focus of the programme is looking at doing a school survey to look at the teaching and the facilities at the schools that the children, the cohorts, attended. The findings identified a number of strengths that other countries can learn from. And also the Vietnamese Ministry of Education have been using the results of the research to inform their own policies. So that's 3 examples of how DFID-funded research has made a difference or is making a difference. So now over to you for a couple of minutes, because we're going to start to think about what some of the challenges are to getting research into use. So here we have a researcher, a Southern researcher, and she's written a paper and she's had it accepted by a peer-reviewed academic journal. And she's thinking, I wish my research would change the world. And what I want you to do in pairs or little groups where you're sitting is to discuss the question in the green box, which is what are the challenges to her wish that her research will change the world being realised? Is that clear? Okay, so a couple of minutes with the person next to you or behind you or in front of you. See if you can think of some challenges. Okay, so I'd be really interested if maybe a few people could just shout out very briefly some of the challenges they came up with. So if you want to put your hand up, if you've got one to offer. Anyone got a challenge? Yes, at the back.
Well, I'm a librarian, so the first thing that springs to mind is disseminating the information and making sure the findings of your research reach people in the field and go beyond the university walls, whether virtual or actual.
Great, so going beyond the university walls and getting the research out there. Thank you. Any others? Yes.
Potentially that the research needs to be done collaboratively with people in the countries to understand how they presently there's less money.
Yeah, so doing it collaboratively, particularly in the countries where the research can be used. Yeah, yes.
I think there's always a challenge, and I think this comes back a little bit to what Julie was saying about the public capex, that very often the results of research that show that a particular course of action should be taken, but that particular course of action is politically inexpedient. In other words, it would be, as Humphrey Appleby would say, a courageous decision to actually take that course of action. And to that extent, I think one of the challenges to the research being turned into any kind of thing that would change the world is to get both politicians and their constituents on board to the validity of that research. And that is, even if you can convince the politicians, they're going to go against what they might know to be right if they think they'll lose an election.
Yeah, so there is a challenge there about decision makers wanting to use the research and how they use it. Thank you. Any other challenges anyone wants to raise? Yes, Mark Anthony.
I was thinking that the communication of research findings is a problem. In that if you publish an article, probably a peer review, and probably the research finding has to do with farmers, for instance, in Ghana, how do you get to reach those articles in the peer review journals?
Yeah.
So how do you communicate research finding to them at that level?
Yeah.
It's also a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to come on to that in a minute. Yes.
Another challenge is high rates of rejection of papers.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, that is a challenge. So in this situation, she's already had it published, but again, I'll touch on that in a minute as well. So thank you. Anything else before I move on? Yes.
Yeah, it's related. If you publish, then you also want to make, one way to make your research known is to go to conferences, actively participate
That's very true. Did everyone catch that? So conferences and things are a really good way of getting your findings out as well, but you may not have the budget to be able to travel to relevant conferences. Okay, so thank you. They were all really, really good responses, and I'll cover some of them in the rest of the presentation. So what I'm going to do is suggest, explain 4 ways that DFID is using to help address some of these challenges. So it's really good that this researcher got the article published in a peer-reviewed journal article, in a peer-reviewed academic journal. And other researchers around the world, particularly because of the work that a lot of you in this room are doing, will hopefully have access to it in their institutions, and it will help to shape the research that then they're going to go on and do. Because there are still challenges affecting the extent to which the research is being accessed, and I'm sure we'll come on to that again today. The issue is a little different with policy-making institutions, non-governmental organisations, people on the ground, as Mark Anthony was saying, people on the ground who could make use of the findings. They don't necessarily read academic journals. The institutions may not provide access to journals to their staff. And often policymakers don't have the time or the capacity to use them. So if publishing in an academic journal is the only thing this researcher does, the research it isn't that likely to change the world. There are other things that can be done that will make her wish more likely to come true. If this researcher worked for a DFID-funded programme, one of the things we have is an open access policy. And that basically says that DFID-funded research needs to be made open access when it's published in a journal. So hopefully this is an open access article, so that makes it more available for people. But the other thing that we would be wanting the researcher to do is to be thinking about other ways to communicate the research findings. We would want particularly if it's a large program, a research program, we would want them to have a dedicated research uptake member of staff, and we would want them to develop a research uptake strategy so that they can really think about what other ways they can use to get the findings into the hands of the people that can make use of them. The picture there is of some guidance that we published last year to help programmes to develop their strategy. And key to the strategy is really thinking about how the research can be packaged and targeted at the people that can use it. Okay, so that's one way. DFID also funds research uptake programmes to support making research available and accessible. And there's a few examples here of the programmes we fund. So there's DRUSA, which is Development Research Uptake in Sub-Saharan Africa. And if this researcher worked in one of the universities that's participating in the programme, then she may find that there's support structures in place to help her to get her findings out there. So the programme's all about supporting universities to improve the accessibility, availability, and use of the research they produce. Then we have ELDIS. I don't know if anyone's heard of ELDIS. Anyone heard of ELDIS? So this is funded through the Global Open Knowledge Hub programme, and it's an online portal that contains a wealth of development research, including quite a lot of research that was done by Southern researchers. So this and other online portals, there's others out there as well, could actually feature the findings of this research, and that might get it out more widely. Then we have SciDevNet, and this is, it's a website that contains reliable news and information about science and technology for the South. And SciDevNet also trains researchers in the Global South to communicate scientific research accurately and confidently. So SciDevNet might be interested in featuring the findings of this researcher's research on their website. They might send a journalist along to interview her. And then we have the work that INASP does, and I'm thinking particularly of the Strengthening Research and Knowledge Systems programme that Julie was talking about earlier, so I won't spend too long on it. But AuthorAid, this researcher has managed to get it published in this great peer-reviewed journal article, possibly because she was able to access AuthorAid training that trained her to write really well for publication. So this researcher's research findings might contradict what other researchers have found on the same topic. And this doesn't mean to say that this researcher's research isn't of high quality, but it means that she found something in the context she was looking at that was different from what others had found. And a decision maker, policymaker, practitioner who may be a member of the public, can make a better decision if they have access to the body of evidence, available evidence. And for a busy policymaker, having access to a synthesis where lots of evidence on the issue is pulled together is actually really useful because they're really busy and they don't have to do the work of seeking out lots of individual studies. So DFID is really keen on syntheses, and there's two examples on the slide. One is a systematic review. So we, over the last 3 years, have been funding a systematic review programme, and I think there's around 60 that have been published so far. And there's also evidence papers that members of staff across DFID work together to pull the evidence together, and they're both peer-reviewed syntheses. And the last thing I just want to talk about is, and again, it picks up on one of the responses, sorry, I can't remember who made the response, is about the people that make the decisions. So in this slide, we have a policymaker, and she's got a decision to make, and she's not quite sure which way to go with her decision. And the issue here is that she might not think that using research evidence is a good idea. She might not even think about using research when she makes her decision. And if she does think using research to inform her decision is a good thing, she might not have the incentives or the time in her job to seek out research, to appraise it, and then to sort of work out how to use it to inform her decision. And even if the researcher was able to go and talk to this decision maker, if the will isn't there to use the research to inform the decision, then it's not going to change the world. And there's a couple of things that DFID's doing to address this issue. One is the BCure programme that Julie mentioned. So VACA-UCO is one of the 6 projects under that programme. And all of those programmes are working to build the capacity of a variety of decision makers to use research evidence in their decision making. So, for example, there's one programme that's developing the capacity of government cabinet secretaries, for example. And also there's ongoing work within DFID. So within DFID, we're making decisions all the time. We have a number of advisors who are making policy decisions and also who are making decisions about programming on the ground. And so my team is working to help to build their capacity as well, to find and appraise and use research evidence in the decisions that they're making. So I'm going to stop there. So that was just a few examples of what DFID is doing to help get research into use. And that, of course, there's many more things that can be done, and there's many challenges out there, and I'm sure some of those will be picked up throughout the course of today. So does anyone have any questions?